move forward and talk about measuring what matters. Um, if you are a small business owner, or if you're thinking about starting a business or growing your business, it's so important to know exactly where you are and to have data that supports what your business goals are. So we're going to talk about managing with data. We're going to talk about finding and selecting useful data that will help you. We'll talk about data collection, how to organize and display your data once you have it, and then how to analyze it. And then I'll give you some additional resources where you can look up additional information. So, why in the world do you want to have data? So, if you have data, it supports what you're trying to do as a business owner. It helps you make decisions. Um, it gives you some cold, hard facts about where you are now and where you're going. It also demonstrates to stakeholders like lenders, your board members, if you have investors, that you have used some concrete information to make decisions about your business. It also provides early warning if you're running into problems. If you look at your financials, um, you can tell, certainly by your cash flow, what direction your business is going. Um, it might warn you that you're running out of cash, um, in which case you can make decisions. What can I do to change that? And maybe I can introduce a new product. I can improve my marketing. What do I need to do to make it better? And on the other hand, you might see that you're building up a cash surplus. So maybe you can hire that assistant that you wanted to, or maybe you're ready to expand. So there are lots of ways that you can use that data to help you make decisions. And of course, if you're a new business and you're working against your business plan and your projections, that's your roadmap, and you can see how you're doing according to that roadmap. So we have to say that data collection and analysis should be an integral part of your planning. Obviously, if you're doing market research, you want to collect as much information as possible about your competitors. Um, you also want to do financial projections. Certainly, if you're going for a loan, you need to have a very good financial plan. And even if you have nothing else, a good financial plan helps you decide how to implement your business. You may decide, well, in phase one, I can afford to do this. When I build up a little surplus, I can go to phase two and phase three and so forth. So the financial projections are really critical to the success of your business. So having the data really lets you work towards deploying your business interests, expanding, um, and keeping your business going. So critical, just absolutely critical. So there are certainly advances in IT since the 1980s and 90s. One of the first innovative ones was called the Balance Scorecard. And it's a dashboard concept developed by Robert Kaplan and David Norton. And it has both or entirely financial, customer, internal processes, and learning and growth. So financially, we want to be able to see how do we look to shareholders. So we're going to measure things like revenue, profitability, return on investment. Customers, we need to know, are our customers satisfied with the work that we're doing? What is our market share? Do we have customers that are returning? Our internal processes, are we being efficient? Are there things we can do to improve efficiency and reduce cost? What about quality? Are we finding that customers are sending things back? If we have a product, uh, what about innovation? If you look at a company like Apple, where they every year come out with a new iPhone, they're they're reinventing themselves. They're coming up with some new thing. And if you talk about speed, how many people have switched to using Amazon because they have that 1 day delivery? Um, so think about all of these things have an impact on the success of your business. And you might want to think, how can we continue to improve and create value? And that's certainly, again, we can go back to something like Apple, where they just keep upgrading. And obviously, all the phones do that. But Apple probably makes the biggest marketing hype over it. And we also want to think about things like, how can we improve the skills of our employees to make us more efficient, or to allow us to adopt new technology? Think about the culture of your organization and how important that is. Um, you want employees who feel like they're part of the organization, that they are involved in the decision making, that they really have an impact on the success of your business. So, some of the key functions and benefits of using the dashboard concept is that you can see where your daily activities are linking to your strategic goals. It's also kind of a holistic view where you can see how you balance your financial success with customer satisfaction. And you might think about, maybe, gee, we really improved this process, but now our are unhappy because we're not having enough customer interaction like we used to have. So those kind of data will give you an idea of how these various components impact and work together. Having this dashboard really communicates, what are your strategic objectives? What are you looking at in the entire organization? And you want to have key performance indicators that identify the really important, critical pieces of your business. So, how it works, you define your objectives. And at the time you define your business goals and objectives, you should be thinking, how am I going to measure my success for reaching that objective? If you can't find a measure, is that an important goal? So you want strategic initiatives for each of these areas in your business. And you want a balanced view so that you can, again, have strategic alignments, continuous improvement in all areas of your business. Another thing you might think about looking at that can help you identify ways to assure performance excellence. The Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award is an exhaustive study of your organization, and they do publish guidelines for evaluation, which again are extremely detailed. And if you wanted to make sure that your organization was really performing to the extent that it can, you might want to use those criteria just as a guide. They cover all of these categories: leadership, how the organization leaders guide and direct its strategy, how it not only sets its strategy, but deploys it. Um, Customers, how does the organization focus on its customers? So you're looking at, are they satisfied and are they engaged? So all of these components, measurement, analysis, and knowledge management. So again, it's how are we measuring our success and how are we communicating it? What about the workforce? How does the organization manage and develop its workforce? Operations. Again, what are your processes and are you continuously improving them? What are your key performance results? So you want to look at your product, your process, your customers, and your workforce. So all of these come together to make your organization successful. And I can tell you if a company wins the Malcolm Baldrige Award, they are exhaustively measuring their performance and optimizing it. So how do we find and select the most useful data? One thing is your internal financial statements, your sales volume. Ideally, if you have products, you want to look at your sales volume by product line or service line because you want to be able to see which ones are being successful, what's your profitability by the service line, um, because you might want to make decisions about focusing more on marketing those that are more successful um, rather than just evenly spreading your marketing dollars. So you want to look at your internal processes, the quality and efficiency records that you keep, any employee related data. Certainly looking at your customer surveys and complaints. You can use the Census Bureau to look at if you're interested in your customers, your customer area. What's the profile of the perfect customer? You can look at industry associated websites, maybe to get at least comparative data. And then, of course, the more you know about your competitors, the more you are able to see where are there gaps that you could fill or things that you might do differently to enhance your product or your service that would be unique as compared to your competitors. So key performance indicators are the ones that are most relevant to your business outcomes. So if if you have a product, a lot of it's going to be focused on that product. Is the efficiency in manufacturing the product, the quality, those kinds of things. Um, they're used in a balanced scorecard, and they're also used in the Baldrige Award criteria. So you want to pick data that's really relevant to the outcomes, but you don't want to pick too many, maybe three or four, depending on the size of your business. Um, you have to recognize that there's a cost of collecting data. Now, certainly your financial data is probably going to be accessible through your accounting system. But other things like customer satisfaction, um, employee downtime, employee satisfaction, those kinds of things take time and effort. Uh, but if you can automate them, that would be ideal. You want to assure that your information is as accurate as possible and timely. If you collect something that actually occurred months ago, it's not going to be as relevant or as easily interpreted as something that you collect almost immediately. And then you want to select data that you can drill down. If you see there's a problem, you want to be able to figure out what's causing it. So if you look for customers, customer complaints, it's always important to find out what your customers are unhappy about. But you also want to know what are the good things, so you want to ask them who did a good job for you? Were you really satisfied? Um, what were the satisfaction levels? If you are a business to business um, company, for instance, and you provide product to 10 different companies, and one of the companies decides they're not going to use your service or your products anymore, you definitely want to know why. Is it because of the quality? Is it because of the price? So you want to get feedback from those individuals or those companies that have decided we're leaving. Again, your financial performance, you definitely want to monitor your overall profitability. Again, as I said, it would be good to monitor by product line or service line so you can determine which are the least profitable, which are the most profitable. And probably the most valuable tool that you have is cash flow. Because if you don't monitor your cash flow and you're running with a negative cash flow for very long time, you're going to go out of business. And that goes for both for-profit and nonprofit businesses. Cash is king. You got to make money or you'll go out of business. You want to measure your internal business processes. Again, if you're making a product, you want it to be high quality. Do you have a lot of defects? You should be collecting that. If you have defects, what's causing them? You can drill down and find out. Um, Same thing with efficiencies. How long does it take you um, to complete the cycle of the product or the service? When it comes to employees, look at employee turnover. That's the one most costly thing related to employees. When you think about what does it cost if an employee leaves, you got to probably cover their work by paying overtime. You might have to pay a recruiter. If you hire someone, it might be a matter of months. And then you have a period of training time where they're not as productive as other employees. So whenever possible, it's probably better to try to rehabilitate your current employees than to replace them. You again think about employee satisfaction, absenteeism, process downtime, and things like technology deployment. Are your employees learning the new technology as you implement it? And if not, what's the steps that you can take to improve the situation? So if you're a really small business, it is difficult to come up with data to monitor the quality and productivity of your organization because you generally have a low volume of activity. Maybe you don't have automated sources of data. Maybe you're not able to keep adequate records. And then again, if you're a sole proprietor, you probably don't have enough time. So we can talk about some quick and dirty options. So if we look at John's repair shop, he's just keeping the downtime incidents on a logbook. He's power outage down 3 hours. The lift wouldn't operate, so he loses 24 hours. He's got 4 mechanics sick for 6 days, 57 work hours, and so on and so forth. And you see, they're not very often. It's like every couple months, but he's keeping a good track of why is he having downtime. And here is this customer feedback, and he's doing very simple thing, indicating the various components that he services, how many good comments he got, how many bad comments he got, and how many mixed. And he also has some little notes about nice waiting room, bad copy, sloppy body work. So he's kind of keeping a log again, so he can go back and analyze the data. And we'll see a little bit further how we do that. So if there's something that you really can't measure, you might want to look at scrap sales, for instance. If you manufacture something and you have to scrap things that don't meet the inspection, if your scrap sales goes up, that means your product line is doing worse. And what you want to do is reduce that scrap sales revenue to a minimum. You might look at indirect rework indicators, looking for countable things. So if you're doing work that needs to be done by hand, you can look at the number of pencils, pens, or erasers that get used. Things that might not make a lot of sense, but if you think about them, you can relate them back to the issues that you're dealing with. Now, if you have an accountant, they mostly will start you with a financial chart of accounts unique to the type of business that you have. So that will help you when you set up your business initially so that you will be geared to your own industry and be measuring the things that would be important for your industry. You can revise that. For instance, if there are not a lot of enough categories for the number of products, you can always add those or services. So again, you can work with your accountant if you feel that you want to measure something that you can do automatically through your accounting system. If at all possible, again, you want to automate data collection because it reduces the amount of work hours. And let's talk about the collection. Again, if it's possible, automate your collection. And if the manual collection, you make it as easy as possible. And as you saw with John, with his garage, he just used check marks. Anything you can do to just document it in a timely way. So you're capturing the data when it occurs and not saying, well, at the end of the week, I'll make a note. That loses the accuracy that doing it in a timely way helps. So select a few critical KPIs. So you don't want to have 10. You might want to have two or three that are really important for you. And definitely one of them has to be financial because, again, monitor your cash flow. So you can group your KPIs by your internal business processes, um, elements of your business plan, marketing, finance, operations, etc. Um, and then you want to list the supporting data elements under the top KPIs and try to use, there might be elements that you can use, say, from your financial plan that also works in to monitor your marketing, um, or something in your operations that will help you with your marketing. So try to take advantage of intersections in the various areas of your business. And again, try to make it accurate. So again, the closer to the time of the occurrence that you can record it will maintain the accuracy and the timeliness. So when you display data, it's so much more effective if you can use graphs. Um, and you want to, again, highlight the most relevant aspects. And then line graphs or bar graphs are good for over time. And things like histograms or graphs are good for sorting them into categories. Use scales that are reasonable for what you're trying to display. If you use a scale that's too big, you won't see the trends, but if you use one that's too small, you're going to exacerbate the small uh, minor variations. So here's an example. These are score KPIs that we monitor. Um, this one, chapter sessions by month. If you look at here, you see these are closeouts. That means that we didn't actually have a meeting with a client. The blue ones are how many new clients we had, and the green ones are how many follow-ups. So if we see a client multiple times, that's a follow-up. So we saw that we had a serious problem here, and we implemented a client, what we called a client assignment team, to make sure that every client was addressed as within 1 or 2 days. And we also made sure that we trained the mentors to do follow up with the client. In other words, when they had a first meeting with the client, they would make an appointment for a subsequent meeting. And as you see, it had an amazing impact on increasing, not hugely increasing the first attempt with the client, but certainly the follow up. Here is the cycle time from the time that a client enters a request to the first meeting with the client. And you can see that it was at 7 days and it went up to almost 14. And again, we have kept training the mentors to be more responsive, make sure to check their emails every day to find out if they have a new client. And it has paid off. And here we're looking at volunteer engagement, which is how involved and how satisfied are the volunteers with the work that they're doing and the leadership that they have. And you can see that we had a problem here in 2018 and 19 where we had some leadership issues. And once those were corrected, we've done much better. So, and here again, we check how many follow-on clients do we have? Well, about 70% of our clients continue working with their mentor over a long period of time. So we keep looking at that and addressing areas where we understand we have problems and try to correct them. And we're still working on this. So turning data into information. And again, we're going to go back to the objective is to help you make decisions. So don't collect data that's not going to be helpful. You want data that's going to be meaningful, that will help you make decisions. And just having the data isn't useful unless you can turn it into information. So consider all the potential information that you could possibly use, and then try to fit it into what your vision of your business is and how you're going to perform. One caveat is don't weaponize your data. So if you're collecting, for instance, customer satisfaction data, and you get complaints from the customer, don't use that to penalize your employees. Um, Make sure that you also collect the good comments and let your employees know that you're getting good comments. If you got negative ones, it's not the person necessarily that's the problem. It may be the process. So again, if you get negative information, make sure you understand what's causing it and not just dump it on somebody or something. So when you look at your analysis, you want to look at the level. What's acceptable? When you set up your KPIs, think about the threshold of, to you, what's acceptable. When you talk about quality, probably never going to reach 100%. Efficiency, you're probably not going to reach 100%. But what is acceptable? Is it 90%? Is it 80%? So come up with a number. If you can measure where we are now, and maybe you're at 70%, then you might want to set a goal at 80% or maybe even 75. But you can keep, again, if you're looking at ongoing quality improvement, which you should, you can keep moving that as you improve. What you probably shouldn't do is to say, if we're at 70% now, by next 6 months, we want to be at 100%. That's unrealistic. Think about what is realistic, what we can possibly accomplish, and then also think about what are the things that we could do to change it, and then set some tasks to say, okay, here are the things we've identified that we think would improve it. Give somebody responsibility to monitor it more closely and see that change is implemented. What is the change that we want to see? Who's going to be responsible for it? And how long are we going to give to make that change? If you don't break it down into those kinds of steps, just saying we know what the problem is isn't going to change it. Although sometimes looking at a problem does, and just having it monitored does improve it because people recognize it's being monitored. Always look at the trends. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? You always, of course, want to get better. And if you're not, you want to keep examining why is this process not getting better? What can we do to make it better? Or maybe it's as good as it can be. Compare your business performance with similar businesses. Are they doing the same thing but not making as much money? Maybe they're making more money. Maybe they're essentially doing the same thing in the same area, but they're getting twice as many customers. Why is that? Is that their marketing? Is it their product? Think about it, you know. And then again, how is the information that you're receiving going to make a difference in your overall plan? If it doesn't contribute to how you're going to be operating in the future, then it's not worth collecting the data. You only want to collect data that's going to help you make a difference. So this is John's garage. You saw all the things that he kept where he was getting customer feedback. And now this graph just shows you what he got, the positive, negative, and mixed. The one issue that you don't see is how many of the services, like how many oil changes did he actually do? How many breaks, etc. So it's kind of difficult to relate it to the overall scope, but you can see that, goodness, if you remember back, one of his comments was body work is sloppy. And clearly, more than one customer thought that was the case. On the other hand, you can see there are some where he's getting good positive feedback. And here's his cash flow. When you look at this, you can see, goodness, February and November seem to be the biggest inflow. And is that a seasonal business? Well, gee, not really. People take care of their cars all year long, but maybe in the fall and winter, people are being more concerned about transmission work, uh, other things. If they're in, if they are worried about the winter, and maybe in the summer, he's replenishing inventory. But then let's look a little bit more at his profit by job. And you can see that his oil change is pretty consistent year round. There are a couple months, maybe there's a little variation. But brake replacement, you can see some months they don't do any. And exhaust system profit looks pretty good, though you can see some places it's not great. Engine overhaul, uh, that's the darker orange. That looks like it's pretty good. It's probably close to being his best. Then transmission is pretty good. And body work, there's not that much of it. And based on his customers, he might want to think about just giving up on the body work because it's not that frequent and he's gotten a lot of customer complaints. And if you have a small business, you know that one customer complaint wipes out 100 positive comments. So maybe he wants to think about getting rid of that service. Um, Here's another one that's of concern. You would like the estimates to be pretty close to zero, the difference between the actual and the estimate. But what we're seeing is we're getting negative numbers. Now, we don't know for sure what time frame this is, or if these are actually just individual ones, but it looks like he needs to train his people who are doing the estimates to be more effective. So certainly that speaks very loudly. And then here's a look at his downtime. If you remember, he wrote a logbook, how many hours he estimated, and you can see that the hugest amount is that time when he had 4 out of 5 of his mechanics sick because he lost 57 hours. This supplier disruption was certainly significant. So he might want to think about having backup suppliers if that happens again. And he also might want to think about how he can improve um, or decrease the equipment failure. Um, the other ones maybe are not so bad. And then he also has his employee turnover. And this is really interesting. This is pay, and that looks like a really small slice of the pie. But if you put pay and benefits together, then you're talking maybe 20%. But the huge amount here, almost 50%, is working conditions. So that's something that he really needs to address in order to improve his employee satisfaction and reduce the turnover. And then this is also another worrisome disputes. Not sure what that means, if it's disputes with customers, among the mechanics, what that is, but it's clearly enough that he needs to address it and figure out how to improve it. He might also want to look, since people are not as concerned about their pay as they are about their benefits, maybe he needs to look at what are comparable benefits being given to mechanics at other service stations. So if a KPI results in questions, you want to drill down. So as we just talked, about, say, the benefits. Maybe he needs to look at other local garages. What are they doing? What kind of benefits are they paying that maybe he isn't? And is it possible for him to be competitive? So apply the Pareto principle. They always say 20% of the customers do 80% of the business. So you want to look at, say, your customers, uh, really appreciate the ones that give you the most business, maybe give them discounts, whatever. Um, Look at your employees. You're going to have top employees and you're going to have run-of-the-mill employees. You want to groom those that are especially talented and supportive and productive and let them know that you appreciate them. But again, whether your KPI is showing you something that's good or bad, you want to understand what is causing it. So you also have to think about, does data correlation isn't necessarily cause and effect. So variable A could change variable B. For instance, if I blow up a balloon, you know that the air going in is what causes the balloon to expand. Conversely, if I squeeze the balloon, you know it's causing the air to go out. But if you look, for instance, at ice cream consumption over the course of a year, and you look at shark attacks over the course of the year, those look like they correlate, but you know that they don't. However, they're both impacted by the weather. Weather causes an increase in ice cream consumption. It also causes an increase in shark attacks. So you want to dig in and make sure that what you're thinking is a cause and effect actually is the direct cause or effect. So these are links to some resources that you might find helpful. Some free analytical tools. But now you want to think about modernizing your data and using artificial intelligence. In the past, you used the tools that you could afford and also ones that would be easy to use. And that didn't require coding as an interface. And some examples are Microsoft Access or Google AppSheet, Monday, Stitch Data. Some of those you've probably used. But now there are a lot of AI tools available. You have Zoho, which it will take a CSV file and generate a full dashboard in a minute. Julius AI is good for data science and analysts. It acts as a personal data analyst. So you can ask, show me a trend of sales by region, and it generates the chart. It also explains why. And Bricks is good for spreadsheet users. It's kind of a hybrid between a spreadsheet and a dashboard, but you can ask it to clean data and create blocks of charts that look like a modern presentation. Excelmatic is really for non-technical users. You can ask it to upload, get workflow. You can just use natural language. It just change the bar chart and make it a dark mode. So if your data are coming from Google Ads, social media, you might want to look at Looker Studio. It's completely free. It does include Gemini features if you're used to using Gemini. It will help you write formulas and suggest ways to visualize your data. And again, it's free, so I would try it first. Polymer gives you really high visuals. It uses AI. It will tag your data and then categorize it and then give you options of how to visualize it. So if you want more control, you got Metabase, Cascade Genesis. So again, these are ones that you can look up. Hopefully, you'll find one that works for you and for your business. So we'll look at your questions. Yes, the session is being recorded and you will get a copy of the slides. Yes, that seems to be Measuring KPIs for an online business, um, it depends on what of business you have because your KPIs are not going to be that different whether your business is online or in brick and mortar because you're always going to want your financial data. You always want to look at your marketing data. You always want to look at your internal processes. Um, so they're not going to be that different. And I would suggest if you're working with a score mentor, again, which is free, they can help you identify the KPIs. But I will say, if you're starting a business, if you're an ongoing business, you've got to figure out how to measure your success. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to let people know that you're being successful. And especially if you're going, say you want to expand your business and you're going to go for a loan or you're not for profit and you want to apply for a grant, if you can't tell them what your track record is and how successful you've been, it's going to be tough. So start out calculating, what are the things that are going to be really important for me to let me tell other people how am I being successful, and set them up. Just say, what are my business goals? One of them is probably related to money. Again, if you're a nonprofit, one of your major ones is how can I show that I'm helping this group of people that I'm providing services for from my nonprofit? So I hope that answers your question. Um, okay, so again, I'm glad that you spent the time. You will get a copy of the slides. You will get um, a link to the recording, and I hope the rest of your day is going to be productive.